Clyde, it seems that a belief system is an early stepping stone to forming a worldview, that the myth is underneath the worldview, perhaps at an unconscious level. And it may stem from characterization of a hero, or it may stem from the need for somebody. And Jennifer, I'm so glad to hear the bark at your end that your dog is okay. Her dog had a diagnosis today, and I'm glad that she's okay. But that I'm concerned that we have polarized views in our culture today, that there are belief systems that they're not that they're the myths are incompatible with one another, but the beliefs are. And the beliefs really go to authoring people's behaviors, giving them confidences that they wouldn't otherwise have. And I'm hurt by that. I'm hurt that we have families that have people within them that we can't talk with, or it's difficult to talk with, or relations down the street that we have difficulty talking with. Because I think we share a common myth, but we have different characters within the myth. And they just have formed a different worldview. And how do we get to a place where we can heal one another and participate in a field of harmony? Like Rumi says, meet you out in the field, I'll meet you there,
Yeah. Well, I think one thing, as I listen to you talk, Dana, and I'm sure Connie might have something to say about this, is I've always been of the belief that myths arise and can arise both from our shadow side and our light side. And I think you see the myths arising from the shadow side manifesting themselves in places like Washington on January 6th. So myths are powerful. And you can see the power that myths hold when they arise from the shadow side in terms of the folks who did attack the Capitol, and how people who understand that can encourage that myth and foment and support that myth. I'm not sure you fight a myth with another myth. I think you may allow yourself to live in the truth of a myth that comes from a place that is more wholesome, more healthy, more whole. And it is only in that way that you can represent who you are in response to those folks who may be living out a myth from their shadow. I don't think you can just beat down another myth, because myths, regardless of where they come from, they're just goddamn powerful. And I think it's up to us to live out a myth that has meaning to it. As somebody just asked the question, I think it was Will, how do you discover and find a myth that makes sense in this world? I think as you do that, you, in a sense, may be able to drown out, and I'm just using kind of pulling out from the ether there some words, but you may be able to drown out that alternate myth that comes from the shadow side. I don't think you can fight it out. I don't believe that there's anything in our history that shows, other than extreme violence and the subjugation of someone, when you resort to the violent clash of mythologies. I mean, basically, that's the history of religion, right? My mythology says this. Oh, no, wait a minute. Your religion is actually a mythology, but my religion is the truth. I mean, that's essentially what goes on in the West. Of course, if you asked me, maybe after I'd had a little bit to drink, I might tell you that maybe we shouldn't allow any of the great religious traditions of the West to have as much power as they do, because they might be the source ultimately of some of the worst myths that allow us to prosecute violence against other people. You know, my God's better than your God. No, my God's better than your God. Well, I'll kill you. And in the history of humanity, more people, I don't have to tell you this, have been killed in the name of God than for any other cause on earth. And really, if you follow back even the myths right now from the dark side, those are myths ultimately based on, I think, an errant belief in religion that we have today.
Thanks for that. You know, I think everybody tends to live through the lens that they're a protagonist, or typically, unless they're living in the lens of being a victim. But what happens when you antagonize a protagonist?
Yeah, they react.
That's exactly what's going to happen. And so I think what you're saying, I think the Quakers are onto something when they're saying you can't really face evil down. You let evil defeat itself. Although
Yeah.
there are some times that doesn't seem like enough, and it doesn't seem urgent enough either. So I'm not sure I'm ever left with really clear answers on what to do. And I hope I can find that center that you're talking about, but or at least anchor it as firmly as you have. But I do believe that engaging it and thinking about it like we have, like Socrates would, landing at the end of the day with a lot of open questions, but a lot of deeper perspectives, you know, is about as best as we can do.
You know, I'm also going to go back to something that, you know, King said, believed, practiced, and trained people. We trained people in the freedom struggle to do with the spiritual center. And that is, if you remember what happened in the 60s, King specifically, and this again comes from not from Gandhi, but even older traditions than that. The whole idea was you evoke, not intentionally, but just by your presence and not being moved, you will evoke the animosity, the violence, the perpetuation of oppression by the forces that you wish to change. And you have to realize that that's the only way that you get that change. You don't try to engage them directly in battle. You simply are there standing in your truth, and just standing in your truth evokes them to react in such a way that the violence and the insanity is so obvious that change happens. I mean, that's the fundamental basis of the Black freedom struggle and its history again in nonviolent movements, that nonviolence is not passive, and it's not even always that nonviolent, because it evokes the violence of the side that would oppose it. And King was very clear about that, which again is why you can't ask people to go into that place without giving them a spiritual center that allows them to realize what they are going to face, from billy clubs to dogs to water cannons in the 60s to rubber bullets, pepper spray, and tanks in the in our current time.
Thank you for that. Thank you.